You're watching This Week in Louisiana Politics with Fred Childers.
Good morning, I'm Fred Childers. I hope you're having a good weekend. Thanks for joining us for This Week in Louisiana Politics on your local election headquarters. We have a lot of political news to discuss, so let's get started. And we'll start with redistricting in Louisiana. That session has wrapped up and the newest maps await the governor's signature, or veto. None of them create a new majority-minority district. Now, the idea to have such a district was widely supported by Democrats and parts of the public.
Flagrant attempts, these were real attempts, maps that were more compact, maps that split fewer parishes.
Meanwhile, state lawmakers are preparing their lawsuits if those maps are passed. The NAACP and other voting rights advocates are calling for Governor John Bel Edwards to veto the redistricting maps as they rallied outside the governor's mansion earlier this week. The groups argue the latest census data shows a significant growth in the minority population, and they want congressional maps to reflect that. They said the new elective maps for the state do not accurately represent the African American population now.
Make sure that we get the representation that the census numbers dictate that we deserve.
Governor John Bel Edwards has 20 days to sign, veto, or allow the maps to become law without his signature. That's an option as well. The governor has said he does have concerns about those maps. Budget talks are off and running before the legislative session, and with rare extra dollars for the state, debate of how it would be best spent is beginning. Political reporter Shannon Heck breaks down what some of the hot topics will be.
A proposed $38 billion budget is before the state legislature. It's a rare year when hundreds of millions of dollars are in excess or surplus, and lawmakers have their own ideas of where it should go. The governor wants to put $500 million away just for a new Mississippi River bridge in Baton Rouge.
That water sector issue where we know we're going to have more applications and more money coming in than we have, it's going to be hard at a certain point to say we got to put this money here to build a bridge when certain parts of the state don't have clean water.
$400 million is being put towards paying the federal government back for the hurricane storm damage and risk reduction system. $450 million will pay back FEMA for debt accrued during Hurricane Katrina.
There are ongoing discussions taking place, but obviously when you pay your bill like this, it gives us another arrow in our quiver to say, look, we've made good on our obligations.
All this extra money is leading to the state nearing its spending cap. Under the Constitution, the legislature can only spend a finite amount of money to prevent overspending. But with all the extra dollars, the cap may have to be temporarily lifted to allocate the money.
I'm hopeful and I'm confident that when we look back on this in years to come, Louisiana will be recognized as having made wise decisions as to the use of this money.
The budget will go through several rounds of debate in the regular session before final approval later in the year. At the Capitol for your local election headquarters, I'm Shannon Hecht.
Well, the Louisiana Office of Tourism is asking the state for $20 million this year to help bounce back from the pandemic. Last year, the department got $17.5 million from the American Rescue Act. This $20 million they are asking for would come from the rest of the federal dollars waiting to be doled out. And with the seafood industry taking such a big hit from Hurricane Ida, the money will also be used to promote that business to aid in recovery.
As we know, and as we come out of COVID, opening our doors back up to the world, we need to promote Louisiana like never before. Prior to COVID, 51.3 million people visited Louisiana and left behind $1.9 billion in taxes.
Nungesser says he is also looking to invest in the state's museums to bring more tourists into them. The legislature will take another look at their request before making final approval. Representative Danny McCormick introduced a bill into the Louisiana legislature this week that would classify homicides as justified if committed for the purpose of preventing imminent destruction of property or imminent threat of tumultuous and violent conduct during a riot. Current Louisiana law considers homicides justified when committed in self-defense, in defense of others, if someone reasonably believes someone else is likely to use any unlawful force. The future of Diamond Jack's Casino, that's in Shreveport, remains uncertain after its owners got another extension last week instead of presenting plans for reopening, adding to concerns about how much longer the property will remain vacant. Alexandra Meacham reports.
Diamond Jack's is still empty nearly 2 years after COVID restrictions shut everything down and the company decided not to reopen.
I don't think it'll take another 4 years. They need to do something with that property now because they got a lot of money tied up into that.
Bossier City Mayor Tommy Chandler says Diamond Jack's used to generate more than $1.5 million in revenue for the city and employed 300 people. But revenue is not the only issue.
Well, we're concerned with the vacant property and the looks of the property.
It's a concern state gaming regulators raised last week.
It's not marketable. I'm just hoping it hadn't got past the point of being marketable. No one wants to come in and just totally redo the AC, plumbing, and it's just a shame it got to this point.
We also have an obligation to the city of Bossier. They're very, very concerned about that property, Mr. Connick, Mr. Smith. I mean, the mayor and his council, and they're extremely concerned about the condition of the property.
In spite of those concerns, the board reluctantly gave the owners of Diamond Jack's another extension, 60 more days to work out a sale or give up their gaming license.
No more extensions. After this, we're going to just surrender it.
Chandler is hoping someone will come in and renovate the place sooner rather than later.
I'd like to see a real good casino or something that's making revenue for the city.
All right, that was Alexandra Meacham reporting. Louisiana leaders who represent you in Washington are pushing for hurricane relief from Laura, Delta, Zeta, and Ida. They're working to get more federal resources to address the needs of those impacted. They're asking for more of the funding from the $5 billion disaster aid package. Now, that funding has already been approved, but only a relatively small portion has been doled out. They're also asking for the money to be expedited and additional investment in key Corps of Engineers projects to prevent future hurricane damages. Russian troopers are making their way to the Ukrainian capital after invading the country late Thursday night. Ukrainian officials say Russian forces are now operating inside the city limits of Kyiv. Neighborhoods reduced to rubble as gunfire and explosions erupted around the city. Civilians are hiding underground in a metro station as the campaign continues. Armed police officers are stationed outside of government buildings there. Louisiana's congressional delegation issuing statements on Russia's invasion of the Ukraine this week. They all appear to be on the same page. Republican Senator Bill Cassidy saying, quote, Putin's invasion of Ukraine has made us all stand with the Ukrainians. And Senator John Kennedy, also a Republican, saying, quote, I'm talking about expelling Putin not just from international markets, but from the international community. We need to make him a pariah. Representative Garrett Graves, also a Republican, says, quote, this is why we must not abandon President Reagan's vision of peace through strength. And Democrat Congressman Troy Carter saying, quote, I stand ready to support the president's plan to impose severe consequences on Russia for this invasion and to consider other congressional actions as appropriate. Coming up, is it a case of do as I say, not as I do? The New Orleans mayor's office caught up in a mask mandate controversy. We'll have that next. Stay with us.
This is your local election headquarters.
Welcome back. Former St. Tammany Parish Sheriff Jack Strain will serve 4 life sentences behind bars. A jury found Strain guilty of aggravated rape, aggravated incest, sexual battery, and indecent behavior. Charges prosecutors said Strain was a master manipulator and sexual predator who has forced young boys into sexual encounters since he was a teenager. Strain's defense lawyer has indicated they plan to file an appeal. Strain is also awaiting sentencing in a federal corruption case. The City of New Orleans Communications Director Bo Tidwell spoke to the controversy surrounding patrons at the mayor's Mardi Gras ball last weekend when pictures and videos posted showed a number of guests not following the city's indoor mask mandate. LBJ brings us the details.
The mayor removed her mask this weekend at the Mardi Gras ball to take a photo and throughout the evening to eat and drink. We need to do a better job of modeling the expectations around the masking guidelines, and we're going to continue to try to improve on that.
The City of New Orleans Communications Director Bo Tidwell spoke to the controversy surrounding patrons at the mayor's Mardi Gras ball last weekend when pictures and videos posted showed a number of guests not following the mask mandate, and according to WGNO legal analyst Cliff Cardone, this makes it tough for the city to enforce the mandate.
Their credibility is going to be affected when the mayor exercises such poor judgment or poor leadership.
And some residents are saying much of the same.
After pushing a mask mandate, I think that's straight up hypocrisy. I mean, that doesn't set a good image for the people of New Orleans.
And even though the outcry has certainly been heard by City Hall, Tidwell offered a self-enforcement plea for other Mardi Gras balls.
There are no mask police. We're asking everybody to come at this with a goodwill and to do it in a way that makes people more safe.
But no doubt, many feel the guidelines are unfair.
Well, it creates a double standard. The leadership gets to avoid their own mandate, and a regular citizen feels second class.
Many, however, are still following the protocols.
I understand about the balls. We went to a Zulu brunch. We had to take off our masks to eat, but the whole time, though, in between, we did have our mask on.
Yes.
Because we were following the mandates.
For WGNO News, I'm LBJ.
Coming up, Entergy customers footing the bill for damage from recent storms. Greg Hilburn wrote about it. I'll talk to him next. Stay with us.
This is your local election headquarters.
Welcome back to This Week in Louisiana Politics. Well, a surcharge is coming. If you live in Louisiana and you use Entergy for your utilities, you will see an increase in your bill very soon. There is a reason for that. Some might not agree with it, and it is somewhat political. So we've invited on our friend, Greg Hilburn, who covers Louisiana politics for the USA Today Network. Greg, good to see you, buddy.
Oh, man, it's great to be back on the show. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So let's talk about this surcharge. Nobody, a lot of the customers are complaining about it, but as I mentioned, there is a reason for that. The bills are going up. Tell us about the vote that allowed this to happen.
Well, as you know, there was a Public Service Commission meeting. The Public Service Commission regulates utilities, and it's a 5-member commission, and the vote was 4-1 to move forward with this plan to allow Entergy to recover its hurricane/storm repair costs for the past 2 years, most of them, and that's to the tune of about $3.2 billion. And the customers will foot the bill for that. They will, in the form of that monthly surcharge, for 15 years. That's longer than you'd finance a car for. And many people finance a house for 15 years. So it's a long time to have that stuck on your bill.
Yeah, and we know it's going to be, what, around $10 or so?
I think anywhere from $8 to $12, depending on the interest rate that the company can get when it takes the package to Wall Street and kind of sells the package to Wall Street.
Right. Yeah, I saw you. In fact, I should have mentioned that at the onset. You had written an article about this, and you had a lot of great details, and you always have good stories. I saw what looked to be some other options other than passing it to the ratepayer. But before I get to that, Foster Campbell voted against it. He is in northwest Louisiana, out of the impact zone, as you wrote, and he doesn't believe that his customers should pay as much as those of us down in South Louisiana.
He believes there should be, moving forward, some kind of a proportional payment that he represents all of North Louisiana, 24 parishes. Each of these commissioners represents about 1 million people, more than your congressperson, man or woman, represents. And he believes those who didn't suffer as much damage and shouldn't have to pay as much as those who do. And that's not been the case traditionally, or for that would be a new concept. So far, it's been traditionally one for all and all for one.
Yeah, and I would say it wasn't very well received either, I think, when he was talking about that. But he also talked about Entergy passing this on to the ratepayers. He doesn't seem like he's a big fan of that just in general. In fact, I think he said to them, or you quoted him in your article, saying the ratepayers are going to eat the whole mule. I'm not familiar with that phrase, but I assume it means he's against the ratepayers paying the whole thing, right?
He is. That's a Fosterism. He's been around, as you know, first elected to the Louisiana Senate in 1976.
Wow.
So quite a history of public service, elective public service. And Fred, the utility, Entergy in this case, is entitled by law to recover its costs for these repairs through the ratepayer. Now, it's not allowed to make any profit off of it. It's a pass-through cost. He brought up executive pay for the company, how well the company's doing, the dividends the company is paying out, as an example of what he believes that the company could afford to also invest in this, in these repairs.
Yeah, and I want to get into that a little bit. And yet I do remember Foster Campbell when I was reporting up in Northwest Louisiana. He does bring up a good point, and that is why couldn't they borrow the money?
Well, essentially, if they borrow it traditionally from banks, it would be, they said it would be 7 to 8%, which would also be passed on to the ratepayer too. So it would be more expensive than this current option of taking it to Wall Street and basically bonding the money out with the ratepayer as the collateral. The $8 to $12 monthly surcharge for 15 years. So it's cheaper for the ratepayer to have it securitized through Wall Street than if Entergy went to the banks and borrowed it from there.
Good points on both sides. So I wanted to switch gears a little bit here, and you also have written extensively on the redistricting effort, which is now over, and the maps have been submitted. Not everybody is on board with those maps. In fact, I think a lot of the Democrats and the Legislative Black Caucus has said that they want the governor to veto these maps. If he were to veto these maps, when do you think he would do it?
I think, so he has 20 days from when he received the legislation, which I believe was Monday. I don't remember the date. He won't do it this week, certainly, and he won't do it early next week during Mardi Gras. I think he'll take his final, he seems to be in no hurry. So maybe late next week or perhaps even the week after, I think he'll take some kind of action, whether he signs the bills, whether he vetoes the bills or lets them go. If he just lets them go, they would become law. And he is getting, a lot of feedback and from groups who think that there should be more, minority representation in these maps. That despite the population increase of minorities, in particular our Black citizens, now make up about a third of the population.
Right.
There were no increases in any minority majority districts in any of the maps. So as you might understand, folks who are advocating for that are upset and definitely want him to veto it.
All right, well, we will be keeping an eye on it, and I know you will as well. And it's always good to see you, Greg.
Great, can't wait to see you again. Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you, sir. Stay with us.
Right.
We'll be right back.
This is your local election headquarters.
Welcome back. Looking ahead to the coming week, tomorrow, Nora Ahmed with Louisiana's ACLU will speak at the Baton Rouge Press Club. She'll discuss the legal challenges to some of the redistricting maps and the upcoming legislative session. By the way, that legislative session is only a few short weeks away. It starts March 14th and could go until June 6th. And of course, we'll be all over it. Thank you for joining us for This Week in Louisiana Politics. I'm Fred Childers. Stay safe, stay informed, have a great week. I'll see you next Sunday right here on your local election headquarters.